Welcome to a live stream of the Your Next Mission podcast from the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault at Fort Campbell, home of the Screaming Eagles. Proudly brought to you by Cavalry Agency, Navy Federal Credit Union, Purdue University Global, and Veterans United Home Loans. Now here's your host, the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army and co-founder of the American Freedom Foundation, Jack L. Tilley.
Good day out there, veterans and families, and I am so motivated. Welcome to Season 2 of Your Next Mission, a project initiative of the American Freedom Foundation. As you just heard from the voice of God, I'm Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, and your host for today's show. Today, we're coming to you live from the Don F. Pratt Museum at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne Air Assault, and the home of the Screaming Eagles. And we have a great show for you over the next hour and a half. We're going to have 3 segments that really tell the story of this great division. We'll be talking to Captain McKenzie Huggins and Sergeant Daniel Omega, who will share their experience in this great division. And in the second segment, I'm thrilled to have Lieutenant Colonel retired Dr. John O'Brien, historian and director of the Don F. Pratt Museum, along with Lieutenant Colonel retired Ed Sherwood, author of Courage Under Fire, Airborne's Hidden Battle at Tam K. And in the last segment, I'm honored to have the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault Command Team, Major General J.P. McGee and Command Sergeant Major Veronica Knapp, giving us a behind-the-scenes look at the 101st. Now, I'm so excited to introduce Captain McKenzie Huggins and Sergeant Daniel Omega. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, don't clam up on me. Hey, before we get started, you know, the audience is really excited, not hopefully, but to listen to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And ma'am, we'll start with you.
I'm from McDonough, Georgia, just south of Atlanta. I went to West Point, graduated in 2014. I branched aviation, and down at Fort Rucker, I selected the UH-60 Blackhawk as my airframe. From there, I went out to Fort Riley, Kansas, and had a great time at Fort Riley. It was a heavy unit there, so learned a lot about armor. I know
I'm an Army guy here.
Former tanker here, and then back down to Rucker for Captain's Career Course, and I've been at Fort Campbell for the past 2 years now. I met my husband at Fort Riley. He's an intelligence officer and also a current company commander. So I command Alpha Company, 5th Battalion, Phoenix Company, over at the airfield here, and he's the HHT Troop Commander for 217 Cav, and we've got 2 dogs, 2 horses, so we're loving life.
Yeah, there you go. Sergeant May, how about yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Sergeant Daniel Omega. I am from McKinney, Texas. I am the bass player for the 101st Airborne Division Band.
You almost look like an actor to me, but go ahead.
Oh, you're too kind. I'm the bass player for the 101st Division Band here. I've gotten a chance to perform as a civilian, as a soldier, in so many cool and unique places, and for a lot of wonderful and amazing people. Most recently, I've gotten the chance to do the Air Assault School here at Fort Campbell. I got to do the Expert Soldier Badge, and I was the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault Soldier of the Year and the 18th Airborne Corps Soldier of the Year.
That's quite an accomplishment. We're going to talk about that in just a second here. Captain Huggins, can you tell me a little bit about what's the average day like in an aviation commander's life? And what's the average day for you at Fort Campbell?
So I get to fly about once a week, which I enjoy. So depending on the day, I'll be out flying, and that kind of consumes it. But otherwise, I'm with my company. Aviation typically has smaller companies, so we only have about 42 people in my company right now, split between maintainers and warrant officers who are all pilots. So I go in, we have a production control meeting every morning, which is like our daily maintenance meeting, and go through the status of the 10 aircraft that we have in Alpha Company. And then we'll go through and we'll plan flights, plan missions. Obviously, we have all the regular battalion meetings that kind of get through to get back to the hangar, back down to the company, since that's where I enjoy being. And I think Fort Campbell is really unique because it is the Air Assault Division here, and we have the Air Assault School here. We have a ton of air mission requests that come through our battalion and to our company. So we're really lucky in the fact that every single week we have an AMR that we're working, whether it's a air assault for one of the ground force units or supporting the air assault school here with Fries and Spies, which is the fast rope insertion and in the air assault. So we possibly flew Sergeant Olmeda on his rappel out from air assault school or sling load operations. We really kind of do it all in terms of the Black Hawk mission and the lift mission. So it's great. It's a huge diversity, and no day is the same for sure.
You sound like you stay pretty busy every day. That's telling me right there. I got tired of something. Well, wait a minute, I got to slow down. So, hey, now you've been in the Army about 8 years. Can you tell me what kind of challenges you've had to overcome over the last 8 years?
I think one of the biggest things is probably coming to terms with the fact that quite literally, like the Army goes rolling along, that
I know that they kicked me out.
it changes a lot, and it's not just the equipment that comes in and out, it's the people and the different influences of commanders or the soldiers that you work with. And I think it's good and bad. Like sometimes when you have a good thing going, you want to hold on to it, and you really got to let go and keep moving with the times. And but also too, like if you work somebody that's difficult to work with, or a mission set that's difficult or not enjoyable, that will also pass too. And I think one big thing that I picked up is like I've had really great times, whether it's flying a certain mission or being in a certain place. I'm like, I don't want to leave here. This is great. I don't want this person to switch out. I like what we have. And then I kind of realized you can't control it. And the only thing worse than moving on is getting left behind. So you just gotta keep yourself updating with even with the airframe, switching from a Lima to a Mike with the helicopters has been a hard change for somebody. We phased out the Kiowa. So even with aviation, there's big changes and little changes on a Army scale and on a daily scale. So I think that's been something that I even now struggle with, is saying like, hey, I love the company that I'm in right now, and I love being in command, but I've got another job coming, and when it's time to go, I got to say goodbye and move on and keep going with it.
Well, one of the things that's for certain is that technology changes all the time. You got to stay abreast of what the kind of technology they have, and that's really your responsibility as a commander or sergeant. Sergeant Omega, tell me what an average day is for you.
Yeah, like anyone else in the Army, the band starts at PT in the morning. Something that is unique.
Tell it isn't so. The band does PT?
The band will do some runs and some push-ups, and we'll get you out with us next
No,
time.
no. I'm just talking trash.
But yeah, after PT, the band is unique that we are a self-contained company. So while we are all musicians, we also take on additional details. I work in supply, and I'm also the unit's armorer. We have people who do human resources training, and these are all musicians that have learned these additional details along the way. After that, after lunch, we come back and we have rehearsals. The band is also a pretty small company at about 42, 43 soldiers. And we have jazz band, rock bands. We have ceremonial ensembles, the big marching band that will do the change of command ceremonies. So between the 40 some odd of us, we break down to different ensembles and learn the music that is required for whatever mission's coming up next for us.
Yeah, music is really uplifting. You don't know this, but when I was in Bosnia as a division sergeant major, I have a tendency to sort of reaching out and grabbing people every once in a while, but I was in church and this guy got up and played his guitar, and I says, you're really good. Would you mind entertaining soldiers in the field? And they had a person that was singing, I think, too. And so I grabbed them, put them in the vehicle, put them on a helicopter, took them out in the field, and let them start singing for soldiers. Music is uplifting. I absolutely love music. So God bless you for what you're doing. Hey, I understand now. You told us a minute ago you was recognized at the 101st and 18th Airborne Corps Soldier of the Year. Just to let you know, I was never selected as anything. Anything with that kind of stature anyway.
You did pretty well, I think.
Well, I did okay, but it was just pure luck, not like yours. You had to work as hard as luck. Can you tell me, one is where did they announce that? I'm sure they announced it at the ceremony. And two is, how'd you feel when they said, you're the #1 guy in the division, or #1 guy in the Corps as a soldier? That's a heck of a doggone honor. I mean, God bless you. I mean, that's tough. That's tough. Yeah, I have a follow-on question to you, but go and answer that one.
Sure. Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. We were talking a little bit before, and I'm 32 years old. Joined the Army at 29. I've had to withstand all the "Hey, Sergeant Grandpa" jokes that any other 32-year-old would.
Well, wait till you get to be a grandpa, then you really bother. Go ahead.
But yeah, the opportunity came, and I remember my dad told me with any school, any opportunity in the Army, just say yes and do your best.
Yeah.
And so I gave it all I had, and I never thought I was going to win the 101st Division, and that blew my mind. And then I went on to compete with the best of the best at the 18th Airborne Corps, made friends with all these competitors, and it was so motivating to compete with people who were kind and great soldiers. And when they announced that one, we were just in formation, nothing too crazy, out in a little park, and they announced the runners up, and I was like, oh, my name wasn't called, so I'm good. And then I heard me, didn't know what to do.
Well, here's an additional question for you. Who started the Soldier and NCO of the Year for the Army? Do you have any idea?
A little birdie told me not that long ago that it was, in fact, the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army.
Oh,
it was
you
you.
so smart.
It was you, Sergeant Major.
The reason I did that though is I think I like competition. And I think if you have competition, it's going to make you better and better and better at their skills. So I like to have people compete. If we're racing, I want to beat you. If we're playing pool, I want to beat you. If we're racing, whatever it is, I want to win, because really, if you look at it now, there's no second best in our profession. Either win or you pay with your life sometimes. And so I like winning. And I think because of this division, I'm not going to say it's a great division. I'm not going to compare it to the rest of the division because people will jump on me about that one. But it's an outstanding division, has a great history, and you're doing a lot of great things. This is a question for both of you. Can you tell the audience what's so special about being in this division?
Well, for me, one of the most special things is it's the air assault division of the Army, really, and the 101st is well known everywhere. And as a Black Hawk pilot in an air assault battalion in a line company, this is the absolute best place that I can be, because air assault is the heart and soul of this division, and that's what I wake up and do every single day. We go out and we train air assaults, whether we're flying here or anywhere else. Our gold book standard is based on how we do operations out of Fort Campbell here in the 101st. And not only that, but it drives the entire culture of the division here, that when you come to Campbell, it's not jack of all trades, master of none. It's jack of all trades, master of all trades. That when we do things, we go out and not just to finish it, but to be the best at it. And I really like that spirit of excellence here. It's a driving factor for me, and I think it's a driving factor for the division as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you answer that question just a sec. When I went through training and I got all stuff and I got my uniform on, and I went back home and I showed off my uniform and all the awards and stuff like that, do you feel pretty proud about just being in the Army? I mean, showing that patch and showing people what you've done, and not to throw it in their face, but to say, you're one of very few people that do this kind of job. I think it's 1% of our country really serve in the military.
I have a ton of pride, not just to wear the Screaming Eagle patch, but the uniform. And I think for a lot of people, they have a job and it's what they go do during the day. Mm-hmm. For me, this is who I am. It's a part of who and what I am, that even when I'm not at work, or even when I'm not wearing my uniform, I'm still a soldier, and I'm still part of the 101st, and represent the Screaming Eagles everywhere I go. And so I'd say, yes, I have a ton of pride, and my dad does too. I think I ordered him Screaming Eagle. So I think I ordered him 50 101st patches when I got assigned and came out here, because he was like, yeah, I want to give them to my friends. And you go in his office and he's got Screaming Eagle up next to all my, he actually has my West Point diploma and my certificate of commission hung in his office at home. Man. So my family's really proud of me too. So that helps out a ton. It's not just my pride, it's my pride in my family and me and what I do.
Well, it's the mission that you do. I mean, again, there's no second best in your mission, and what you do is real critical to our country, and certainly to the Army. How about yourself? Why is it what's so special about being in the 101st? And this add-on question here, I'll get it to you quick here. And when you go home, do you feel a little bit different?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the 101st, the first thing that comes to mind is the history of the 101st, and to be a part of that history is just really too cool. When my family found out that I was coming to the 101st, and I found out I was coming to the 101st, the first thing my dad was talking about was just the history and how impressive the division is, and how I get to be a part of that. And the caliber of musicians to bring it to the band side is incredible here. You're talking about competition and being around musicians who are better than you and rehearsing with musicians that are better than you, no matter what the instrument, just brings you up to the table. You have to compete and you have to perform at your absolute best just to hang with the talent that's around you. And that's made me a better musician and a better soldier every day. And then to your follow-up, yeah, my family is super proud. I'm happy to represent my family name as a soldier. My father, my grandfather, his brothers, my brother, all served in different capacities in the military, Army, Marines, and Navy. So getting to continue that sort of tradition in the family and getting to wear the family name and hopefully bring respect to it makes me very proud.
You know something, I don't want the audience to laugh, but I'm going to tell you something real quick. When I was a young kid, I wanted to be a singer, and I wanted to be in a band. But unfortunately, when the people heard me sing, they wouldn't let me sing and perform. It really bothered me about that. But I did try it. I tried to play an instrument and try to blow the trumpet and all that stuff, but I never had the wind and the capacity or anything like that. But I actually love music. In fact, for about 10 years, myself and Ted Hacker did concerts around the country. So I love music. I just am not very talented at anything. That's for doggone sure. We're talking with Captain Mackenzie Huggins and Sergeant Daniel Omega from the 101st Airborne Division, Air Assault. They made sure that I say that at Fort Campbell. And you're watching Your Next Mission podcast live with me, your host, Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major of the Army. I like saying that also. And I'd like you know, this podcast or vodcast is not about me, and it's not about anybody individually. It's about our veteran community. It's about what we can do to assist our veterans in any way that we can. And so if you want to reach out to me or text me, you can call me at 844-424-1134, or send me like I said, send me a text or call me, and or send me an email at smatilley@yournextmission.org, and I'll actually answer you. That'll be a surprise. And I love calling people up and seeing what's going on. Or you can comment on your social media channels that you're watching, and I'll get right back to you. I want to communicate. We want to help our veteran community. Also, if you're watching this on the live broadcast on YouTube, please like us and hit that subscribe button down at the bottom. You know, we have a family of veterans out there. We want our veteran community to work together, to make changes, to help each other. And so that's what this show is all about. It's about our veteran community and doing what we can as a veteran community each and every day to make it better. So, okay, let's pick it up where we left off here. You guys got to answer a few more questions here. Captain Huggins, recently you had a 21-day field exercise. I think it was called Lethal Eagle.
Yes.
Can you tell me what kind of experience that was for you? But before you say that, you know, I'm an old soldier. I remember we used to go out and stay 90 days, in the field and all that stuff. So I know about staying in the field for a long time, but go ahead.
Well, going to the field as aviation is a little bit different. I think we have a different perspective sometimes.
Now you're talking about me being old. Go ahead.
Now we get to, I got to fly around, so I got to see a lot of the division. I mean, I can honestly say it was like the first time I've done a training event like that where we had an entire division in the field, and I think we used every square inch on Fort Campbell and even went up to Fort Knox, and so we had a couple missions that we flew up there and back. And we packed a lot into the 21 days, and I think my company grew a lot. And I think I wasn't at the division level, but I can only assume that there are a ton of lessons learned there, because we have another one coming up in April and May. But we went out and we got to fly an air assault. We did a JFE, which is Joint Firepower Exercise. So we were part of it, and I think they had over 20 aircraft that participated, and we moved literally hundreds of soldiers out there. So that was one of our larger scale. On a smaller scale, we got after a lot of the other training events like sling load operations for us, and even just some of the soldier skills. I think in aviation, especially with warrant officers, since it's a different breed of people, sometimes you forget, like when we start out, like for me, I'm a soldier, and then I'm an officer, and then I'm a pilot, and it kind of goes down. So the Navy is nothing without its ships. The Air Force is nothing without its planes. The Army is nothing without its people. So you have to work on those soldier skills, because that's who we are and what we are first at the end of the day. So, I mean, we were face painting up, and we were using trees and branches to cover our CP that we had going. And I think and the little things and the big things. We got a lot better. And I actually got an experience too, a once in a, well, hopefully not once in a lifetime, but a first time for me. Sergeant Major Knapp, the division sergeant major, came and flew gunnery with a crew of mine. And it was the first time that I've ever flown with an all-female crew. There was me, a warrant officer, and my company, Miss Stalker, and then Specialist Ortega was in the back, and then we had Sergeant Major. And so that was pretty awesome because the Army doesn't have a ton of women, and aviation is even smaller. So to get to go and do something like that was kind of a cool experience for me, and I think for everybody involved. And Sergeant Major Knapp really seemed like she had a lot of fun, and she was a great shot out at the range. So we did a lot, and we learned a lot. And looking forward to the next one. My company's going to JRTC out at Fort Polk next month, so we're going to be racked and stacked in our field time this year.
I'd give you just a little bit of advice. Focus on the basic fundamentals of being a soldier. That really is your survival in the field and stuff like that. And it's always about, peacetime, train to make sure you're prepared to fight if you have to fight. And God bless you for what you do. Your reputation is, you're a pretty popular guy in the band. I don't know if you know that or not. They talk about all the great stuff and you doing the bad, but I understand now that you have a special, not a special talent, but yeah, maybe there's a special talent that you're doing to helping people transition out of the military. Can you tell me about what that is? Or
Sure.
maybe you're making money off their side or something. I don't know about that.
No, it's something it's bigger than me. It's been around longer than me. It's the Sounds of Acoustic Recovery. It's a organization, or it's a program rather, that's associated with Soldier Recovery Unit here. We right now, I believe it's about 3 or 4 of us musicians from the band, myself, Specialist Jones, and Corporal Lofgren, and we've been teaching lessons to transitioning soldiers, trying to help them. One of the aspects of it is building resiliency. A lot of them have been injured or wounded, and some of them are just trying to see what life might be like after the military. Setting some smart goals with music and learning and accomplishing those goals can really build some self-esteem. For those who have had some injuries, maybe have some dexterity issues, learning guitar, learning piano is a very low impact way to help building those muscles and helping rebuild that connection with the nervous system. But for me, at least, it's really just gratifying to share something that I love to do, and something that I get to serve my country doing, playing music with fellow soldiers.
Yeah. Do you help a lot of people that have disabilities or been wounded in the military? Is that and do you help spouses also?
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to teach lessons to any military spouses yet, but I'm sure that if somebody asked for it, we have the resource, we have the capacity to fill that need. So if anyone's listening, come reach out to us at SOAR. But yeah, we help those who are physically wounded. Like I said, sometimes it's actually related to something that we can help with when it comes to like muscle and piano and guitar. And sometimes it's other injuries that maybe we don't see, or maybe that doesn't directly impact music education, but we do our best to be a benefit to them in any way that we can.
You came into the military a little bit older. Why'd you come in? Well, okay, I don't want to talk about age here. I certainly don't want to talk about age, but you came in a little bit older. Why'd you come in?
Yeah, the short answer is I was looking for a new adventure. I've been touring as a musician, civilian, for almost 10 years. We're talking about it for a minute. I even had the opportunity to get hired out by the USO as a civilian and perform for soldiers in the Middle East. But I had a friend who was in the Army bands reach out to me and said some of my talents, some of the things that I was interested in, health and fitness, music, might lend itself to a career in the Army. So I took the audition, and
Rest is history.
the rest is history. I'm here, hanging out with some cool people.
No, I don't. I certainly want to catch you up, man.
Yeah.
Same question. Why'd you come into the military? Because your dad made you.
Well, I've actually I have a big family history of serving in the military since the Revolutionary War. I've had an ancestor in every major American conflict, and my dad was in Vietnam, and so I kind of felt like, all right, I'm going to go in. I'm going to join the Army, and I knew from a young age. My grandfather died when I was 5, and he had a flag on his casket, and I thought, why does he have that? And my mom said, oh yeah, my dad was in World War II. And I thought, okay, well, I better go serve. And when I was in 6th grade, I said, all right, I'm going to enlist. And my mom was like, well,
in the 6th grade?
In the 6th grade. And then my mom said, well, there's this place that you can go, and you can go to college and be in the Army at the same time, and the Army guarantees you a job afterwards. And I was like, really? And she said, yeah, it's called West Point, and I think it'd be a great idea. So I was like, oh, sure, I'm going to West Point. And then I got to high school and I was like, wow, you got to like do a lot of stuff to go here. So I finally made it, and I wanted to fly. And so I worked hard my whole 4 years there, and branched aviation, and I've loved it so far. And I think one thing, you meet a lot of people who say, well, I would have joined the Army. I was going to join, but the other thing came up. And I don't really know anybody who wakes up and says, I regret my time in the Army. I don't meet anybody that says, I regret going to West Point, and especially nobody that says, I wake up and I regret being a helicopter pilot, because it's the best profession in the world to be a helicopter pilot in the Army. So yeah, I wanted to live my life without regrets, that I had the opportunity that I missed, and so I've never woken up and thought, man, I made bad choices and I don't like what I do. I love what I do every day. And I'm really grateful and humbled for all the people that helped me get here and helped me be who I am today.
Well, I'm going to tell you real quick, when I always tell people I wasn't the best kid in the world. I was really probably a pretty bad kid. And when a lot of things went on in my life, but when I did graduate, I remember I was sitting on the beach and somebody says, what are you going to do with your life? And I says, he said, you want to go to college? And I says, guys like me don't go to college. So I had low self-esteem, nothing's going right. And I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And then the next guy said, you want to join the Army? And I said, okay. No thought process. I didn't even know they was fighting a war. So I went basic AIT jump school and went to war. And so the Army saved my life and it changed my life. There's no question about that. Best decision I ever made was to serve in the Army and to serve in this country. Hey, look, you guys have, first of all, let me tell you real quick here that you're great soldiers. You're doing a tremendous job, and God bless you for what you do and what you continue to do. Unfortunately, we got to sort of wrap this up here. I don't want to wrap it. I want to keep talking. But is there any final thoughts that you want to share with the audience? Anything you want to say or to the people that are listening today?
I've been humbled for all the opportunities that the Army has given me, and definitely feel honored to be here with you today. Just to get to meet a Sergeant Major of the Army has been incredible, and I love the 101st, and I think especially for people out there who think, oh, that's not for me, or I can't do that. When I was a sixth grader and I said I want to be in the Army, they thought, oh, you're a girl, you'll learn about boys, you'll want to do something else. Like, no, don't ever let people tell you that. Like, the Army has opportunities for everybody, and I've tried to take advantage of that. And I think for anybody listening, just to know, like, there are soldiers out here who are doing great things every day. And so we all really appreciate the recognition that people like you give to the units and the soldiers themselves, because the Army is nothing without its people.
Absolutely. How about yourself?
Yeah, the fact that a 29-year-old band kid could join the Army, go through basic training, compete, and take advantage of every opportunity. The only thing I can encourage anybody, civilian, soldier, young, long in the tooth, is every opportunity that comes your way, try. Say yes, give it your best shot, and take away. If you win, it's awesome. Share that with your family, your friends, your unit. If you lose, take what you learned and try again. It's amazing. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thanks to Captain Huggins and Sergeant Almeida. I'm Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, and you've been watching a live stream on Your Next Mission podcast. And please stick around for our next segment. We'll have a historian, Lieutenant Colonel retired Dr. John O'Brien, and author, Lieutenant Colonel retired Ed Sherwood, followed by the command team of the 101st. Thanks for watching, but please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hooah!
You're watching a Your Next Mission live stream, proudly presented by the Cavalry Agency. They help brands dominate no matter their size. Ideas, strategy, action. This is Cavalry. Learn more at cavalry.com. Navy Federal Credit Union, the most trusted credit union owned by members of the military community, serving all branches of the armed forces and their families. Their members are the mission. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. Purdue Global, providing affordable online education for hardworking adults. Learn more about a personalized, innovative, and world-class education at PurdueGlobal.edu. Veterans United Home Loans, the #1 VA lender for 5 straight years. If you're buying, they're funding your dreams. Learn more at veteransunited.com. Now back to your host, the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, Jack L. Tilley.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Welcome back. I'm Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major in the Army, and you're watching a live stream of Your Next Mission podcast at the Don F. Pratt Museum at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. During the first half an hour, during this half an hour, we'll be talking to Lieutenant Colonel retired Dr. John O'Brien, historian and director of the Don F. Pratt Museum, along with Lieutenant Colonel retired Ed Sherwood, author of Courage Under Fire, the first 101st Airborne hidden battle at Tamkee. In the final segment coming up shortly, we'll be talking to the command team of the 101st, Major General Joseph McGee and Command Sergeant Major Veronica Knapp, giving us a behind-the-scenes look at the 101st. Before we get started, I want to thank Captain Huggins and Sergeant Almeida for being with us today and the great discussion that we had with them. Now I'm thrilled to introduce Lieutenant Colonel retired Dr. John O'Brien, historian, director of the Don F. Pratt Museum, and coming to us via video, I guess, from Atlanta, Georgia, Lieutenant Colonel retired Ed Sherwood, author of Courage Under Fire, the 101st Airborne hidden battle at Tamkee. Welcome. So good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Great to be here with you.
All right. And sir, so good to have you via video out there on the show.
It's great to be back with the 101st.
I'm sure it is. Hey, look here. Our audience wants to hear a lot about you, both of you, and have you answer some questions here. But before we get started, can each one of you tell us just a little bit about yourself? And sure, we're going to start with you, Dr. O'Brien.
Thank you. I'm going to present you, Sergeant Major, with some headgear.
Oh, wow.
You've got a beautiful hat there, but while you're here with us at Fort Campbell,
I got it. Okay.
There's some headgear for you, and carry that around the Army.
I'm going to put that right here with us so everybody sees it. In fact, I'd wear it, but maybe I ought to put it on. That'd be good. Hey, I appreciate it. Oh, God bless you. What do you want to tell anybody anything about yourself here real quick?
Real quickly, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant of infantry in 1977, and I had a wonderful career of 20 years, retired as a lieutenant colonel. During that time, I spent half of that career in the Federal Republic of Germany in the Cold War era, serving with the 3rd Armored Division and the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. After I did my major's schools, I was fortunate enough to come here to Fort Campbell and served the larger part of the second half of my career in the division as a member of the plans team, Battalion XO, Brigade XO, and Deputy G3. So when I finished my Army active duty career, I was fortunate enough to go to work for the Center for Military History, helping to collect, preserve, interpret, and present the history and heritage and values of the United States Army, and in particular, the 101st Airborne Division in Fort Campbell.
That's real quick. I didn't mean to cut you off here. Real quick, it's so important for us to make sure we don't forget about that history of our divisions, of our Army, and everything else. Because I think a lot of people, I don't think they forget, but we need to continue to tell them.
Yeah, and museums are an important part of that. And,
absolutely.
Finishing up my gig here with the Center of Military History, we're in the process of putting together a new museum to replace the Don F. Pratt Museum here.
Oh, wow.
We have 6,000 square feet here to tell a wonderful set of stories. But when we get our new museum built, we'll have 126,000 square feet. And it'll really be magnificent, and we'll really go to work sharing the story there.
I'll have to come back.
Oh, please do, yeah.
Colonel Sherwood, how about yourself, sir? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
I'll be glad to. Thank you again for having me. Like Captain Hudgens, I started out at 12 years old wanting to be in the military. Never changed that at all. My mother remarried when I was 10 years old to an infantry sergeant at Fort McPherson. And he became my role model and my hero of sorts. Went on to school, got commissioned as a lieutenant in '68, went to Ranger School, Airborne. And within a year of being in the Army, I was in Vietnam as an infantry platoon leader with the 101st. I survived that, got wounded after about 5 months in combat, and went on to Germany with the 3rd Armored Division for 3.5 years. Big difference between heavy mech and light infantry, no doubt about that. But I finished 20 years, had to get out due to medical reasons. I've had a good 30 years out of the military, but I've kept my heart with the military. It's one of the reasons I wrote the book. We'll talk about that a little bit in a moment.
Okay, well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. And I used to tell people, I stayed 36 years. So anybody that stayed 20, I used to say quitter. But I'm not going to say that today right here to you. Hey, Dr. O'Brien, Fort Campbell is a great history. I guess it used to be called Camp Campbell years ago. Can you tell me how how this Fort Campbell evolved and the great history or great installation is today? Tell us a little bit about that.
We'll start with the beginning. Right now, this installation is the Army's home of vertical envelopment warfare, and the hometown of the 3 varsity units in that type of warfare: the 101st Airborne Division, 5th Group, and Task Force 160, or the Special Operations Aviation Regiment. It got its beginning in World War II. And it's important to remember, I love Army cities.
Mhm.
Every Army city has its story and has its units that it's attached to. But in 1940, 2 years before we went to war, the United States Army realized it was going to have to expand. And we went from about 200,000 soldiers stationed mostly in small installations in the middle part of the United States, few of them larger than 600 soldiers.
Wow.
And we were going to expand before we went to a war up to 1.6 million men. And then by the end of the war, we expanded to 8 million men. Now, those people need a place to be organized, trained, equipped, and shipped out overseas. So the Army embarked on a project to build 61 virtual cities in order to accomplish that. It was really a tremendous accomplishment. When you go back and think of building these 61 cities, each of which could hold either from 30,000 to 100,000 soldiers at a time.
Wow.
So this location was chosen for a lot of reasons. You had to have the right training area available, and you had to have the right facilities to sustain a city.
Mhm.
And we had all of those. So you have to have water, electricity, interstate, U.S. highways at the time, rail, a civilian workforce nearby, recreational possibilities for the soldiers. And then the training environment here, it was predetermined this was going to be an armored training camp. Our terrain here, the 100,000 acres that we have for training area, looks like Central Europe.
Mhm.
The rolling farmlands, and we had the Cumberland River close by that was just like the Rhine River. So it was a perfect place to train armored soldiers at the time. 3 armored divisions trained here in World War II. It was initially called the Tennessee-Kentucky Armor Camp because the state line goes right through the center of the installation. And then when it opened, it was designated Camp Campbell.
Yeah.
In 1950, it became Fort Campbell, indicating it had become a permanent installation. Now, our city has changed 4 or 5 major ways. You take our 6,000-acre city where the soldiers live, the cantonment area, and our 100,000 acres of training area, and you look at that 6,000 acres, and we've washed over it, changing anthropology and archaeology as the Army changed. Now, World War II, we were a giant bachelor city here. The Army wanted you to have a spouse, they'd issue you one.
I've heard that a couple of times.
Yeah, a couple of times. And then our generation, the 1950s, the Cold War, we became a national defense city. And what changed in the Army, of course, is we weren't going to be a giant bachelor organization anymore.
Yeah.
We weren't going back to that. The baby boom, you and I are products
Yeah.
of that. So the Army had to change to support families, housing areas, schools, our chaplain program, medical program, legal programs, all of those things had to mature with us. And at National Defense City here, we had first the 11th Airborne Division from 1948 to 1956, and then the 101st came here in 1956 to 1967. And in that period, 1965 to 1967, the division deployed and went to Vietnam. And certainly we'll talk with Ed about that transition. But here in the city, we cut sling load, as air assault soldiers say, with Fort Campbell. There was nothing between Fort Campbell and Vietnam. So this became the U.S. Army Training Center and Fort Campbell. It was a place where 2 brigades of basic training were established. And we, instead of having stable Army families living here, we had 10-week-long basic training soldiers living here. And that changes the local economy. It changes how the civilians support the Army installation. Changed a lot here. In the aftermath of the Vietnam War, that it was determined that the 101st was going to come back here. It was a closely fought battle. Fort Stewart, Georgia, almost won. We had changed in Vietnam from a paratroop division to an air mobile division. So coming back from Vietnam, we're 800 warrant officers, 400 helicopters, and you needed facilities to support that.
When I tell people all the time that, when you get into an installation like yours, it's just a city, and a lot of people don't even come off this city. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm gonna go to you. How did your book, Courage Under Fire, the 101st Airborne Battle at Tamkey, help tell the story of history? And could you give me a little bit of background of who, why you wrote the book?
I'd be glad to, and I want to say thanks to Dr. O'Brien too. He's really helped me get it introduced to the 101st.
Well, there's no question. He's pretty knowledgeable about all this stuff.
Yes, he is. Well, it was 2015 when I went to my first reunion with Vietnam veterans I served with. Nobody looked back at the Vietnam War. It was an unpopular war. I spent 20 years in the Army just looking forward. But when I went to this first reunion, I met the soldiers again that I had served with in Vietnam in Delta Company 1st, the 501st. And they were saying, well, nobody knows, nobody really cares about our service. And nobody even knows about the battle that we fought in, which was the battle at Tam Key that I wrote about. It followed right on the heels of Hamburger Hill. And that caused such a political uproar. The battle we fought at Tam Key was pretty much just kept out of the news. And for right reasons, and I address those in my book. But anyway, I wrote the book to let folks know that there was another big battle that the 101st Airborne had fought. And it was a fairly important battle. And I wanted, first of all, to make sure the young infantry soldiers and those who supported those young soldiers, they got their story told. Most of us know that the story of Vietnam, the movies, Apocalypse Now, all the bad movies about Vietnam did not honor the young soldier, particularly the young infantry soldier who carried a good weight on his shoulders in that battle. And that's the story that I wanted to tell. Happened to be, I served in the 101st in that battle. And so the story is about 101st soldiers, but I'm beginning to see in the book that I've written has actually been getting a broader audience about young soldiers in an unpopular war, far from home for the first time. And so I've been delighted that the book has been well received.
Yeah, and you talked about it just now, what you wanted the readers to take away. That one of the things I remember about, of course, I was in Vietnam, is a lot of the lessons that we picked up from Vietnam. I'm not sure we shared them very well with the rest of the Army, whether or not they didn't listen or they didn't think about it that particular time. But I think, I was in the 173rd in the A Troop Quarter Cav. There's a lot of lessons learned that really come back around to us in different wars and stuff. So I appreciate you writing the book there, and I think it's I can't wait to get my copy so I can take a look at that. So
it's in the mail.
That's what a lot of people tell me all the time, and I get it. Dr. O'Brien, can you give me a little background on how the 101st built the legacy and heritage? And I'm sure the concept you talked about a minute ago about the vertical development played an important role of the legacy. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, just to put it in a real quick nutshell, vertical envelopment warfare was something that grew out of the necessity of the stalemate of the World War I battlefield.
Yeah.
And if you could see my hands, no man's land. And what one side would attack across through no man's land, take ungodly casualties, and get into the first trench line. The enemy would then be able to counterattack on terrain that he knew and understand and kick back the force that attacked.
Yeah.
And for 4 years, the battle fought that way. The concept of vertical envelopment, Colonel Billy Mitchell came up with it. Give me, he said to General Pershing, an infantry division, and we'll give each man a parachute. And we'll jump them behind enemy lines, drop them behind parachute at a point of our choosing, and they'll establish a position unfavorable to the enemy, and then we'll punch through with an armored force. And that way we'll get over the stalemate. So when the 101st was activated for World War II and the 5 airborne divisions along with it, that was the concept. And that's the way we fought World War II. Every one of the battles that we look at that airborne forces fought in, it was like that. And then that idea matured in the Cold War era. The 101st Pentomic Division was a way, the vertical envelopment concept was to put an entire division and be able to move them by air, everything by air, to the European landmass and take on the godless communist.
Yeah.
There with a whole division arriving by the air and not having to go across the sea and all the time. In Vietnam, with the advent of the helicopter, we called it air mobile warfare. We got away from the parachute and the glider, and this helicopter provided tremendous mobility. We could move in Vietnam as an air mobile division, a battalion at a time, move the companies of a battalion. That's how many aircraft we had to be able to do that. Coming back from Vietnam, when President Nixon changed the focus from counterinsurgency warfare to a European-centric battlefield, we had to be able to fight Soviet tank divisions. So what the 101st Division came up with was air assault doctrine. And basically between the two, in air assault doctrine, we can move a brigade at a time. The number of aircraft and the technology with the arrival of the Apache and the Black Hawk and the Chinook Delta model and all the sophisticated equipment that we had, we could move a brigade and move it against a high value target that the Soviets would be interested in protecting. Front headquarters, a logistics base, interdict a second echelon division. And that became what was our focus. And we fought that way in Desert Storm. We fought that way in Iraqi Freedom. And then we were confronted with the global war on terror. And because of the nature of that war as a counterinsurgency, our air assault capabilities and expertise tended to atrophy. And so we're in a period now of rebuilding and getting back those talents. And we, multi-domain warfare and the near-peer competitors that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And so we're rebuilding now. I'm sure General McGee will talk about it. What we call joint force entry capabilities.
I think because of being in war for such a long time, there's a lot of things like that we probably have just not did so often here lately. And I think we need to get back to that for sure. Sir, getting back to you here real quick, getting back to that wonderful book for a second, can you tell me the principal storyline under Courage Under Fire?
Yes, first of all, it's a story about young soldiers, young infantry soldiers.
I used to be a young soldier, but go ahead.
Yes, we all did. And I really did not think that the young infantry soldier and those who supported the infantry soldier, that story was well told, particularly Hollywood with their movies like Apocalypse Now and Platoon, really denigrated the soldier in a lot of ways. And I served on the ground in this battle with the 101st. And the young men that I served with went on to have successful lives. Like I said, I went to a reunion in 2015 and reconnected. Nobody was really looking back to Vietnam while I was in the Army. We were looking ahead, rebuilding the battlefield for in Europe for European warfare. Nobody talked about Vietnam. So we kind of left the story to Hollywood to be told. And so I wanted to tell a story that actually honored the young men who served and focused on the junior enlisted guys. And in fact, in my unit, all the officers, with the exception of the company commander, were wounded. So it was all, and there was only one E6 in an entire infantry company. And those young junior enlisted soldiers rose to the occasion, all of them on their first term of service in the Army, all of them in their first combat tour. And that's the kind of story that I wanted to tell. And I think that was more characteristic of not just the 101st, but other combat divisions as well.
Well, I
And
think I told you before, and I could be off on the number. I think about 55,000 people died in Vietnam, and the average age is 18 to 24. And I often wonder about, I can't remember how many were wounded, but I think about post-traumatic stress and all the rest of the stuff that
Oh,
went
yes.
on there that it's just unbelievable. So again, I can't wait to read your book. If you'd
There's
like
a
to reach
story-
out, yeah, go ahead.
There's a story I tell in the book about a Life magazine article where it was talking about how many young soldiers were killed.
Yeah.
And there were 9,000, almost 9,000. It's over 8,000 19-year-olds killed in the Vietnam War. So the entire total was 52,280. I think
Yeah.
that's about as close a number as out there. But a lot of young men and some women were killed.
Yeah. One of the things that bother me sometimes is that people forget about those kind of numbers. And if you'd like to reach out to me or give me a call or a text at 844-424-1134 or send me an email at smatilley@yournextmission.org, or you can leave me a comment on your social media channels or that you're watching right now, and I'll get back with you. That sort of surprised you probably because, most people won't get back to you, but I will. Also, if you're enjoying this live broadcast on YouTube, please look at like us and get on the subscribe button. I think it's down at the bottom. Click on it and subscribe to us. And I appreciate that. Okay, let's pick it up where we left off here. Dr. O'Brien, please tell the audience about the historical presence of the 101st in World War II.
In World War II, where we had our baptism by fire. We had no history prior to World War II, but a rendezvous with destiny in World War II. In World War II,
I'm not sure I could have made it through World War II. That was tough. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. At any rate, the three major battles that the 101st fought in: D-Day, Normandy, vanguard of the invasion into D-Day, where the division jumped 7 miles behind enemy lines, and paved the way for the 4th U.S. Infantry Division to come across at Utah Beach, and where General Maxwell Taylor, the division commander, said, I think importantly for American psychology at the time, you have proved the German soldier is no Superman. Took him out. A couple months later, in September of 44, the division jumped 17 miles behind enemy lines as part of Operation Market Garden. Was immediately, once again, surrounded by the enemy. They had to defend 17 miles of highway known as Hell's Highway, attacked on both sides by German armored divisions, held, did not break. And then several months afterwards, the famous defense of Bastogne, where we didn't jump behind enemy lines, but the enemy jumped around us.
Yeah.
So the division was surrounded and cut off for 8 days. But that's the way the division was trained to fight. When you look at it, it's almost as if they jumped behind enemy lines. And there was a certain amount of resiliency there. And of course, General McAuliffe, who was the acting division commander, responded to the German demand for surrender, nuts.
Yeah.
The shortest military message in the entire 20th century.
Yeah.
But at any rate, that carries a very important legacy. And Ed alludes to it in his book. General McAuliffe was asked after the war, what did you mean by nuts? And he explained to the soldiers he was talking to, the veterans of the 101st, we were surrounded in Normandy and we beat the Germans. We were surrounded in Market Garden and we beat the Germans. And so when we were surrounded at Bastogne, they should have known that it's nuts to think that a Screaming Eagle would ever quit.
Yeah.
And the motto of Ed's company, Delta Company, 1st to the 501st Infantry, was never quit. And Ed makes mention of the fact the soldiers knew that legacy, and that's one of the really important parts about history. And Ed captured it beautifully.
I got it. Since you said Normandy here a minute, I got to tell you a story. I was at Normandy on the 50th anniversary of Normandy, and the division commander asked me to go down there, and they was going to have a ceremony. The president was there and everything. And when I was there, I'd never been to Normandy before, but I was really surprised at what they had. And as I went down on the beach of Normandy, and I started walking around, there was a guy walking around, and he just looked like he was in, I don't know, whether or not in pain or something was wrong with him. And so I I went up and asked him. I said, "Hey, sir, is everything okay?" And he says, "Well, not really." And this is what I want the audience to hear. He told me something that's just unbelievable. He said, "I said, what's wrong?" He said, "Well, I hit this beach." Geez, it almost makes me cry when I think about it. He said, "I hit this beach, and all the guys that was with me got, the majority of them got killed." I said, "Well, you made it." He says, "No." He says, the only reason I lived is I pulled the body over the top of me, and I'm ashamed of what I've done." I'd say to him, I said, "Sir, let me tell you something. You survived, and you did what our country asked you to do. It's just about God. It's about living. It's about protecting yourself and protecting our country. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories like that when you think about Normandy. In fact, a lot of people don't know about Normandy and the things that went on. I guess you probably certainly know a lot more than I do about this, but people drowned it, I guess, when they was coming to Normandy. A lot of them dropped off and drowned it. So anyway, sir, great discussion here. I wish I could talk for about 3 or 4 hours with you. Sir, back to you, Colonel Sherwood. What's your favorite stories that you dug up during your research of the book? Gotta get tears of my eyes just thinking about Normandy here. Go ahead.
One of my favorite stories is how I met the company commander who I write about. I only served 1 day under him. The last thing he told me before he went in to get his wounds attended to, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Ed, take care of yourself. You're my last lieutenant. And we're about to do a combat assault into the enemy stronghold." Well, I got wounded while he was in getting his wound fixed. And he came back out and he led the company. And the main part of the story I write about, a 10-day battle on Hill 376. Company was broken down. I had so many casualties. It was about 50% strength. Well, the good part about that story, when I started looking at writing this story, when I went to the reunion, I found out Captain Leland Roy lived 20 minutes from me in my town, suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. And he had lived there 20 years, and I had lived there for the same amount of time, and we had never crossed paths. We became very close friends. I would not have written the book had it not been for Leland. Leland was the company commander. He had 1 E6 as his senior NCO in an infantry company when he should have had 12 and other senior NCOs. But it's truly a great story of how he was a former junior enlisted soldier himself, and how he led these soldiers in combat is really the heart of the story. And
Sir, is it really? Did it take you 5 years to write this book?
It took me almost a year to think about it and what I wanted to do. When I went to the reunion, that's when the seed was planted. But the research was just incredible. I told Dr. O'Brien the story that when the history of the 101st is practically sacred. Basically, an unknown like me, first-time author, doesn't just come up and write a book about the history of a missing major battle in Vietnam. So the research was extremely important. I think John told me when he first got a copy of my manuscript, he thought it was another throwaway paperback. I love that story because he came to understand that I'd put a lot of time and research into it and to really document what had happened, why it was a hidden battle, why it was undisclosed, and so that's basically it.
Well, I guess the question: why was it a hidden battle? I mean, maybe I missed something there.
Because I mentioned briefly that President Nixon had been elected to end the war. He made his first national speech on 14 May, right during the middle of Hamburger Hill. I don't think he knew what was going on. When the casualties of Hamburger Hill were announced, and the 3rd Brigade did a great job in that battle, but they took a lot of casualties. Well, When the casualties were announced, Senator Ted Kennedy went to the floor of the Senate and denounced the battle as being irresponsible and a waste of life. And Nixon had just said, we're no longer going to seek a U.S. military solution. Well, our battle had already started. Our battle started on the 15th of May, one day after Nixon spoke.
Wow.
And with the heavy blowback that the Battle of Hamburger Hill received, it was a Democratic Congress. He was a Republican president. And it was just really terrible. And so the senior commander of Vietnam just decided that the press would not find out about the battle at Tam Key, and it was never announced to the American public, and so it stayed in the archives. My book is the first book about this battle. The battle is almost as big as the Battle of Hamburger Hill. I take nothing away from the soldiers on Hamburger Hill. Our battle went a little longer, fewer casualties, but between the two battles, there were some 1,100 killed and wounded in just a matter of weeks. And so that's the reason it was not announced to the public.
That's unbelievable. You know, I never told you this, but I was overran and there was 20 wounded and 7 killed. And sometimes I worry about, people not telling the stories about those kind of things that are going on. So, that's tough. Is there any, unfortunately, we're getting ready, I guess, maybe to wrap it up a little bit here, but any final thoughts, sir, Dr. Sherwood, that you want to share with the audience? Any final thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I want to congratulate Ed on something in particular. The Vietnam era, the generation that we've lived across, the Vietnam War is one of the iconic things that stand out. And the Army and the policy of the United States was antiquarian at the time in that we drafted soldiers and we had student deferments, which created 2 cohorts of young men. There were those who could afford to go to college, study art history, go to Woodstock and make love. And there were those who worked in a garage.
I remember that. Go ahead.
There were those who worked in a garage, like Ed's platoon sergeant, who went to Da Nang and made war. And over time, with interpretations along the way since that time, there's been a class division that's been misrepresented by a moral division. And what I mean by that is there's one cohort who thinks that they were more decent. They didn't go to the war, and they don't recognize it was because they were more privileged, or God forbid, because they weren't as brave, but they were more decent. And we can't allow that false assumption, that false history to permeate our future studies of the Vietnam era and that era. And Ed's book stands out like an iron roadblock against that misrepresentation of our history.
I think the problem we have now is that one is that war's not pretty, and people just don't want to know about war. And there's 1% of our country serve in the military and really know anything about the military. And I wish there was a way. And I said that in the last podcast we had, or vodcast we had. I said that I wish there was a way for us to educate people about the kind of things that go on around this world each and every day. I mean, even in the Army, there's about 140,000 people deployed all over the country all the time. So it just really is, it's tough. It's sort of sad. I wish there was more that we could do, but I really appreciate what you do and what you continue to do. Sir, anything that you want to add?
No. Well, let me just say briefly.
You don't have to be brief now to keep on talking.
The young soldiers took a large brunt on their shoulders of the criticism of the war when they came back from war. They were called baby killers, village burners, all of that. That was a narrative that those who were against the war put up. The young soldiers who fought the war were as good a soldiers as we've ever fielded. They were honorable young men. What might have happened back in the rear area was quite a bit different from what happened out on the front, where there are no front lines, but out on the battlefield. And these men, and I have an appendix in my book about how they went on in their lives, in business or education or whatever. And that they're truly as salt of the earth type young men when they were fighting on the front lines in Vietnam. And I think that my book doesn't turn the page on that. There are too many movies, too many other books. But that was my heart on writing. It's tell the inside story of what it was really like to be a combat infantryman or to be supporting combat infantrymen on a field that was really harsh battlefield conditions, but yet they persevered with honor and came out victory in the battle I talked about.
You know, as I listened to both of you talk, if there was one thing that you'd wish this country would realize about, what war's about and what people should understand about the kind of things that go on in war, what would it be? I mean, there's people get killed and die and fight, and it changes lives. It does a lot of stuff. But what's the one thing that you need to know about war? I guess. Is there anything that you'd like to tell the about how brutal war is? I guess, sir, yourself, real quick. Because you're talking about courage under fire and what it takes to engage people to engage people and really, quite frankly, and die for our country. Anyway,
Sergeant Major, that's what I would say. I use the term courage under fire, even though that's been used in other books and other movies, because it's a phrase that comes out of award recommendations for award. And the fact most young soldiers are scared to death on a battlefield. Through their training, they have to overcome that fear. And that's what courage essentially is, overcoming your fear and getting your job done on the battlefield. I just want to hold this up real quick. The guys on the front cover of this book were actually young men in my unit. Wasn't staged anywhere. This is one of the few combat photos that were taken at the fighting at Tam Key. The photographer who took it is now deceased. He died of Agent Orange just a year and a half ago. But anyway, that's what I'd like to leave folks with. It's really an inside look. I don't use profanity. I don't hype the gory details of the wounds. I want 12-year-olds to read it. My first book went to my 9-year-old grandson, whose dad was a veteran, not in Vietnam War, but in Afghanistan. So anyway, that's what I'd leave folks with right there. And one quick thing. John sells this book in his gift store. If you're at Fort Campbell, buy it from the gift store at the museum, because those funds go to the museum, and they have a first-class operation there.
There's a plug for you. Unfortunately, we got to have to wrap it up. I want to thank Lieutenant Colonel retired Dr. John O'Brien and Lieutenant Colonel retired Ed Sherwood for being on the show today. I can't thank you enough. Sir, you're out there and the doctor's right here, so I'm thanking him for both of you guys. A little bit closer. I'm Jack Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major of the Army. You've been watching a live stream on Your Next Mission podcast. Please stick around for our final segment, discussion with the command team of the 101st Division Air Assault, Fort Campbell, Major General J.P. McGee and CSM Veronica Knapp. Thanks for watching, and please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You're watching a Your Next Mission live stream, proudly presented by the Cavalry Agency. They help brands dominate no matter their size. Ideas, strategy, action. This is Cavalry. Learn more at cavalry.com. Navy Federal Credit Union, the most trusted credit union owned by members of the military community, serving all branches of the armed forces and their families. Their members are the mission. Learn more at navyfederal.org. Purdue Global, providing affordable online education for hardworking adults. Learn more about a personalized, innovative, and world-class education at purdueglobal.edu. Veterans United Home Loans, the #1 VA lender for 5 straight years. If you're buying, they're funding your dreams. Learn more at veteransunited.com. Now back to your host, the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, Jack L. Tilley.
Welcome back. I'm Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major. I always love saying that. And you're watching a live stream on Your Next Mission podcast from the Don F. Pratt Museum at Fort Campbell. Welcome, sir and Sergeant Major. So good to have you on the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you too.
Sergeant Major, it's great to be here. And I just want to say thank you for your years of service. I remember, your distinguished career. I mean, you started out in Vietnam and then finished up with Iraq and Afghanistan. And I remember when we needed some good leadership right after 9/11, and you were right there at the top and helping us go in the right direction, Army. So I just appreciate it.
Well, I tell people all the time, just because I take the uniform off, I'm going to continue to serve as long as I can. And so,
that's awesome.
Sir, I know the audience is really pumped up about listening to both of you talk here today. And so before we get started, can each one of you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? And sir, we're gonna start with you right there. Go ahead.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Sergeant Major. So I was born and raised right south of San Francisco in California. My dad had gone to West Point.
Does your team want to win the football?
That's exactly right. No, they did pretty well. And the only one in the time that mattered, the last 2 seconds of the game on the playoffs. But so my dad had gone to West Point and went in the Air Force, and sort of I think passed that spirit on to me. And so we grew up there and came into West Point in 1986, graduated in 90, and have been lucky enough to spend the last 32 years in the Army, serving in places like the 82nd, spent a lot of time in the Ranger Regiment and JSOC, and then have been really fortunate to be here since about 2006 3 times. So as a battalion commander, to include a 15-month deployment in Iraq, and then as a brigade commander from 2011 to 13, as a brigade commander of 1st Brigade, and then went to Afghanistan, and then really incredibly fortunate to come back here as the commanding general. Just it's almost a year now, but time's gone by so quickly. But I've been really lucky.
So, are you married?
I am married. Got three wonderful kids. They're 21, 16, and 13, and they keep us all busy, and absolutely.
Just a little bit of advice. Don't work so hard you don't see your kids grow up. I did that. I worked all the time. I never watched my children grow up. So I'm sure you do a lot better than an old guy like me. Sergeant Major, how about yourself? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yes, Sergeant Major. So I was born and raised in a small town in Ohio. I joined the Army when I was 18, almost straight out of high school.
Funny, I did the same thing.
And it's gone by really quick. So this almost 22 years now in March has flown by. But I came in as a military police soldier, more specifically a corrections officer. So my first duty station was there at lovely Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And I had a chance to go back and do some leadership time as well. But been kind of all over the globe, Korea, Guantanamo Bay, Afghanistan. And my most recent job was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina as the 16th MP Brigade Sergeant Major prior to coming here. I'm married. I have 2 great stepchildren, 9 and 12. And this is just really flown very quickly.
Well, I don't want to tell you much, but I will tell you. I just celebrated my 52nd, wedding anniversary.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
And again, I was talking to my wife the other day, and my kids grew up when I was in the military, and I stay so focused on the military that I certainly missed a lot. So I know you guys are a lot better than this. Okay, sir, can you tell us what's the mission of the 101st? I know, but I think the audience probably wants to know.
Yeah, so the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault represents a unique capability for really the United States Army and the world, and that's the only air assault division in the world. And so what we have is this incredible capability to deliver a large number of soldiers, generally about a brigade combat team, by an aviation movement, what we would call an air assault, to do what is broadly termed a vertical envelopment. So think about the ability to pick up about 4,000 soldiers, move them 50, 60 miles behind enemy lines, and put them in a position of dominance so we can put them at a disadvantage. And so as part of that, we are now part of what they call the Contingency Response Force for the United States Army. And so we are on a alert status to be ready to respond to any of the crises that could emerge around the globe. And I think the interesting thing is, Sergeant Major, for the first time in about 20 years, this is the first time that the 101st Airborne Division has been back at Fort Campbell with none of our brigades getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria, or those places. And so it's allowed us over the last year or so to really focus on getting ready for the future fight, what they call large-scale combat operations, as we're retooling the division to get ready for that. And that's where our focus has been as leaders.
You know, when I came in the Army was 18 divisions, and it went down to 10 divisions in the Army. And I always worried about that, especially when I worked in the Pentagon, about the stress that's placed on the Army and the constant moving and people don't realize about that stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's a lot of stress, and a lot of stress not only in leadership but on the soldiers down there. What do soldiers ask you about? Usually they don't ask their general about anything, I don't think, anyway. Hey, sir, how you doing? See you later. But when you talk to soldiers, what do they ask you about?
So I think with soldiers, I mean, the interesting thing that's changed is, as I mentioned previously, is that soldiers in the past were really accustomed, and they've sort of expected that they were going to go deploy, and so I think they're really struggling not struggling, but interested to know what the future is going to hold for them. And what I always tell them is, can't tell you what the future is going to be. I mean, what we have said is in this division is that we know our future is war. We don't know when that's going to be, and so we've got to take this time between now and then to get ready for the challenge of war that we know is sadly going to be in our future. We just don't know exactly when. So it's a different challenge, one that you and I be familiar with from the 90s, because we didn't know when something was going to happen. Whereas this generation of junior non-commissioned officers, junior officers, there was sort of this expectation that we had under this very regular deployment process that we went to Afghanistan and Iraq. So I think it's probably the number one question they asked me about. What's the future? What's gonna happen?
And the worst thing about that, you can't tell them. You don't know.
Hey, you don't know.
It changes so quickly. Same question you started, Major. What do soldiers ask you about? I know you get out all the time, and I heard about the day I meet with people at Audie Murphy Club.
That's right.
I got to tell you something about that. I competed for that Audie Murphy Club. I went all the way to the Corps board and didn't make it. And so that's the only board I ever went to. I never went to any more boards. So
and you never recovered.
I wasn't good enough. I never recovered from that. But what do soldiers ask you about?
Well, fortunately enough today, we had 3 make it through today, and they just did a great job. So studied very much.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but all sorts of different things, as much things as you could think of. So we talk about being trained, fit, disciplined, cohesive, and ready to win the future fight. And I think a lot of the big questions are, okay, there's a lot of, hey, when's the next time I get a chance to do this? When's the next EFMB or the expert field medical badge? When's the next expert infantry badge? How much time do I have to train? A lot of interest about going to the field and what the expectations are out there. There's a lot of questions about housing and barracks and changes and moves. So a lot of soldiers want to know, okay, what does the future look like for me? Here's where I am. Or maybe I'm getting ready to go to my next duty station. What do I have to do to be successful in my career? How do I get promoted? Anything from life situations to the future promotions or just training in general. So just a whole bunch of questions asked from a lot of different levels of leadership or junior soldiers, but they all want to know what's next and as General McGee said, what's next for this division.
When I'm talking to you, each one of you can answer the same questions there. One of the things as you saw, this question to change the problems and concerns haven't changed a bit. I think it was the same thing when I was in the same kind of stuff. That the problems aren't going to change. The biggest issue I think was pay. They always want to know how they get more money. But one of the things I really worry about is, and this is a question for both of you, is the social media stuff. That's really got to be a problem now with social media. So maybe we'll talk to you, maybe ask a general, what about social media? How does that play into your realm now?
So I think a lot of leaders have really used it as a benefit and another platform to communicate with their soldiers. Even us senior leaders, follow the Sergeant Major of the Army, and it keeps us in tune.
Weird, but that's a good idea.
That's right, and it keeps us in tune with, okay, this is the direction we're headed. Oh yes, I probably need to talk about that too. The Sergeant Major of the Army is talking about that. There's so many things going on, but yet you're still informed. There can be a little bit of a negative side, right? Because the media can kind of construe some things a little bit where soldiers get a little bit confused on the messaging, or they don't really know who to believe or where to go. COVID, for example, we really had to encourage a lot of soldiers to talk to a medical provider before they made any decision about the vaccine, because there was just a lot of stuff in the media. But I think for the most part, our leaders and soldiers and our soldier and family readiness groups have really taken advantage of it, a way to set meetings, to set events, and to communicate with each other on things going on, especially with COVID. when there weren't as many in-person things happening.
Yeah, sir. Same question. Yeah, I think it's a great question.
Yeah, so Sergeant Major, I mean, I think social media is one of these things that nowadays our soldiers are growing up, and it's just part of their life. And I think the way I look at it is it's another instrument or tool, and it can be used for good or it can be used for ill, and it sort of is incumbent upon us to make sure we educate our soldiers to use it appropriately. So what you find is soldiers now are getting information from beyond their chain of command or whatever they watch on the evening news, and they're really getting it from all sort of different sides, and they get all sorts of different perspectives. Some of it isn't really helpful, as we've seen, say, for example, with COVID. But then that means engaged leaders need to be more communicative and be able to answer those questions and really keep soldiers informed on what's important for them to understand. And it's not going away. And we think as the Sergeant Major said, there's some opportunities for us to exploit it as well. How do we use this to communicate better with our soldiers, to get our message as an Army out more effectively? And then how do we do that? But also we've got to be mindful of some of the risks associated with it. And I think what you'll see is as our leaders are coming up, I mean, they're younger than us too, right? And so they're savvy at it as well. And so
they look like babies now when I see them.
So all of a sudden, key messages. We want to shut down the post because snowstorm's coming. And it goes out on social media, and instead of having to do a call chain, it goes out instantaneously. Like that word gets out in 10 minutes to everybody. And so plenty of great things can happen from social media as well. Just you need to have informed and engaged leaders who are understanding it.
I guess the one thing I worry about that is the fact that you listen to too many people, and I think if you're not careful, it confuses them. I don't know if that makes sense or not. I mean, if I'm listening to my commanding general and my sergeant major or whatever, or my battalion, the one thing for me when I was a young soldier, I always listened to my lieutenant or my captain, my colonel, and everything that went on up here, I didn't worry about because I couldn't affect it anyway. So, yeah.
But I do think it means that we've got to do more work as leaders to explain the why and the greater purpose for things. And I think that's probably true of this generation, and I think maybe of every generation coming up, that they want to have things explained to them. And then when they do, they understand the greater purpose and they buy in very, very strongly. But I think that is one of the changes. I mean, it is an information-rich environment that we're all living in today.
Well, we got, I want everybody to know, we got the best Army in the world. There's no question about that. And, a lot of people sometimes say we're not as tough or not or whatever. I think that's baloney. We're still tough. We're ready to go, ready to fight and do what we have to do in this country. That's right. I tell people I never wanted to fight. There's no question.
So I've been in the Army for 32 years. And one of the true.
Well, you know what I say? Now you're not getting out soon, are you?
No. I've been in for 30. Well, I'm on a year-to-year contract as a general officer is what I tell people.
Yeah.
But I've been in the Army 32 years, and one of the few constant is that every 5 or 10 years they tell me about how this new generation coming in is all washed up. They said it to me when I was coming in. I think we've done pretty well, and I think they talked to the people who were coming around 2000. They did exceptionally well, and against September 11th and the invasion. And so, I mean, I think that's just a consistent thing. I don't think you have anything to worry about this generation of soldiers. They're great Americans.
Well, I have to tell you, they said it to me when I came in too. The new generation. Right. I came in at 66. So don't worry about it.
They're telling you about how they won World War II.
The other thing, sir, this would be a good question for you. As I travel around, I hear all the different installations, and I still go around and talk to a lot of people. I love traveling and dealing with people, but I hear about people first. What does that mean to you guys right now? That's a question for both of you.
Sure. So I'll probably kick off because my last job, I had a whole lot of interaction with working on the people first initiatives. And I think one of the challenges we've had here in the 101st is how do we take that tagline, people first? And I think it makes a lot of sense for the Army. And then how do we make that applicable to how you run a division? What does that mean? So first off, I'll just highlight, and I worked on the Chiefs team who helped put this together. First off, people first means a change. It means that we sometimes have to prioritize our people in order to get to long-term readiness as opposed to short-term readiness. So maybe for a unit, it is sending someone to Ranger School and instead of letting them stick around and go into a JRTC rotation. Now, the unit's performance may detract a little bit, but the soldier is going to be more committed to the Army after they graduate from Ranger School. Or maybe we take notice of the fact that they've got some family issues that need to be prioritized, not for their entire career, but for this time in order to invest back in them. And I would argue, Sergeant Major, that good and great units throughout our Army's history have always been people-first organizations. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get these practices across the entire thing. And I think the thing that irritates me the most is when they say it's like operational readiness or people-first. They are completely intertwined and completely linked. And I think you get higher levels of operational readiness when you're people-first, and the Chief of Staff of the Army, that's very much his intent.
I got you were motivating me so much because I guess I wasn't a bad NCO when I was a younger guy. Because I remember in the motor pool in Freiburg, Germany, one time, somebody said we have a slot to send a young man to. At the time, it was PLDC. I'm sure they've changed the name to public time now, but and I said no, I can't send him because we're short people. We're getting ready to go to tank gunner, and one of my friends come up to me. He says, Jack, he says, God, you've never did stuff like that. And I thought to myself, well, I never have. And I'm sort of being a crap. And I said, yeah, I'll go shorthanded, but I want you to get trained. And I apologize for making a not a good decision, but I learned something from that. It's always about taking care of your people. And if you take care of your people, they'll take care of you.
Absolutely.
And if you don't, they won't. That's just the way it is. And I've always, even in the business world now that I'm in here, it's the same thing. I mean, if I'm going to go short, I'm going to go to short, but the end product is what I'm going to get back. Sergeant Major, I don't want to blab on because I can talk about that for a long time, but go ahead.
Sergeant Major, thank you. So we have a couple of initiatives within the division. So a group of leaders are together on the division staff and others with inputs there to just try to come up with, okay, how do we move forward with this? As General McGee said, people first equals readiness, right? If your people are not ready, you are not going to be ready. And those small distractors turn into big ones when you force somebody to go ahead or force somebody to deploy that has some issues at home, right? So it's really being able to take care of some of those things that could turn into big things or get families not supporting the military or feeling like, your leaders only care about the mission and not you. So a couple of great initiatives we have out there. So one is it really started at ForceCom with Foundational Readiness Day, and we call it Eagle Day. And that's the first Friday of the month. And it's time for leaders really to kind of take that day and sit down and say, okay, at the platoon and squad level, we're going to focus on getting to know each other. We're going to focus on whatever it is that leader decides that they want to do to sit down. Maybe they're going on a hike together. Maybe they are doing some training together that's just needed in the squad or the platoon. Maybe it's just focused on something completely outside of the military, getting to know one another, having conversations about how people grew up. And then we have Eagle Tribe Time, which is on every other Tuesday, and that's from 6:30 until 10 in the morning. Again, for those squad leaders at the squad and platoon level, the platoon sergeants as well, to get together. So maybe it's, okay, we're going to go do some really cool PT, or we're going to do the high ropes course today, and we have this time set out. Maybe we're going to go again for a hike, or I'm just going to say, you know what, we got people with kids. We're going to let them go home, walk the kids to school, have breakfast together, and just spend that time together. And then lastly, we have Eagle Day, which is core driven. So that one's really kind of the Eagle Family Day is on Friday at every month. We release at 1500. We do our flag call at 1500 here on Fort Campbell. But it's to give those families some predictability to say, you know what, now again, not everybody, we have shift workers and we have other things that have tough jobs, but for the most part to say, okay, at 1500, I'm going home. I can plan to have dinner, or we can plan to go out to a movie, or plan to do something together on that Friday.
Yeah, it's really funny because I guess I didn't do it too bad when I was in the Army, because those are the kind of things that I focused on. The other thing is that that soldiers know if you're real or Memorex. I don't know if they use that term anymore, but they know if you care. They know if you care about them. So anyway, you're watching Your Next Mission podcast live with your host. I always like saying that, Jack Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major of the Army. And if you got a comment for our podcast, or you want something on the show that'll help you, that'll help our veteran community, I want you to reach out to me. You can text me or call me at 844-424-1134, and I'll actually call you back. That's a big surprise there. Or send me an email at smatilley@yournextmission.org. Or you can leave me a comment on your social media channels. I never thought I'd ever say that, but now I'm saying that. Also, if you're enjoying this live broadcast on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button down at the bottom. If you can't find it, call me. I'll tell you where to find it, and we'll get things going. But we have a family of veterans and active duty. We're all together. We're all veterans, and we're going to take care of each other. So, let's pick it up where we left off here a minute ago. Sir, we heard from Lieutenant Colonel Dr. O'Brien and Colonel Sherwood during the last segment. They painted a very good picture about the rich history of this division. what kind of operations, in this time, what have you been involved in from the last year? What kind of things other than COVID? Any kind of stuff that you've been working on here?
Yeah, so the scale and scope of what the division's been involved with over the last year is really impressive. So we had our combat aviation brigade that was over in Europe for 9 months. We had our division sustainment brigade running logistics throughout the Middle East for another 9 months, and then really everyone came back between the time period of like May and July, and since then. So again, the first time we've all been back together as a division. I should say also we were also running vaccine support teams in Chicago, Cleveland, and down in Orlando, Florida. I mean, and vaccinating hundreds of thousands of Americans. I mean, truly inspirational work. And then really since then, we've been trying to shift the division to get ready for large scale combat operations, this future fight that we talk about that we've been directing. So one of the big things we did, and look, this will be something you recognize completely, but for the first time in about 25 years, the entire division went to the field in November. So from about the 1st to the 21st of November last year, we just put the entire division out at Fort Campbell, Fort Knox, and then up at Camp Atterbury. And we sustained ourselves and we trained. And what it allowed us to do was have some just significant focused time across the entire division on training, becoming more lethal, and really giving time to our subordinate leaders to be able to become masters at their craft. And it was just a great time. I mean, I think for both the sergeant major and I, one of the more vivid memories we have of that is just, and this is something you would be familiar with, wandering around talking to soldiers with a big smile on their face, even though the conditions sometimes got pretty crappy, and just the amount of laughter and just as these teams became more cohesive, it was really great to see. Sergeant Major.
First of all, I love being around soldiers. I just love talking trash with them. Real quick, sir, can you tell me what's the next 5 years look like for the division?
So I think the next 5 years for the division, I think you'll see us continue to focus on what our unique role is for, the future fight. I think there's going to be increased conversation about what the future of vertical lift, and there's already Army-wide discussions about what's going to replace the Chinooks and the Blackhawks in terms of what our lift assets are going to be. I think you're going to see a continued emphasis on our deployability and our ability to be a contingency response force in some form. And I mean, who knows what the world situation will be day to day? It changes, as you well know. But I think for the next 5 years, you're going to have a 101st Airborne Division air assault that's ready for whatever the nation needs them to do.
There's no question about it. Unfortunately, we're just about running out of time. Any final thoughts, Sergeant Major? I'm going to start with you.
So really, I think a big part of this division is, one, you talked about the history, but I think the thing that I see, or that is most moving, not only just the spirit of our soldiers out here, but how much our veterans still very much love this organization. They come around even in their 90s, making the trip to Fort Campbell.
Get closer to that. Go ahead.
Well, you look great.
Young man.
You're doing great over there. But they come back, and they could have served in 20 different units, but they always come back to the 101st, and they're so very proud. And I think that's one thing, is that the soldiers in this division, the leaders in this division, will never forget what they gave, and never forget where they've taken this division and the name that they've given this division. And we hold that in our heart, and we try our hardest every day to keep that legacy alive and be ready for that next rendezvous. And there's something to be said about this history and just the amazing men and women that come out of this division. It's like no other.
Yeah, there's no question. Sir, yourself, final thoughts?
I mean, I just agree. I mean, the first commanding general of the 101st said this division has no past, but has a rendezvous with destiny. And I think all of us are very, very aware of what the nation may require from us in the future. And we work hard every day to be ready for it when the time comes.
I just say, God bless you guys for what you do. And this is a great division. I have my hat. Should have put it on there. But, thank you for what you guys are doing and continue doing. Thank you for letting us visit you for a little while here today. And I know you're busy. I understand all of that stuff, but thanks a lot.
Great to have you, Sergeant Major. Honor to host you.
Thanks to Major General JP. I want to make sure I don't mess that up now. McGee and CSM Veronica Knapp for being with us today. And I appreciate it. You taking your time, and I know you're busy. I'm Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major in the Army. You've been live streaming on Your Next Mission podcast, and that's about the show for today. I thank all of our guests that's been on the show, and we did a lot of stuff, and we talked to a lot of people, and talked to young soldiers, talked to a historian, and then talked to the command when we were finishing up here. And I just want to leave you with some final thoughts. And You know, I served so much in the military. I love the military. I love everything that it did for me, for my life in the military and out of the military. But there's a few things that we really, on this show, we want to dedicate the next year to. And the first thing is mental awareness. You know, unfortunately, the last 2 or 3 months almost makes me want to cry, or not want to cry, but cry. But I've had a couple of my friends commit suicide. And so I'd ask veterans to reach out to other veterans and talk to your friends, talk to people around you. You know, we're a family. We may not talk to each other for 20 years or 10 years or 5 years, but we're all connected. You got to help each other out. So work on talking to veterans, work on reaching out to people that maybe have some problems. The second thing is, and I love this hat because I'm proud of serving in the military. And each Friday, wear your hat. Wear your hat, show your colors, show that you served in the military, whether it's the Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, or the Army, show your colors. And then the last thing is, I'd ask you to, you know, we got great leadership, people that came in, got out of the service, help that community where you live in. Reach out to people in your community and pat them on the back, help them out. Do the same kind of things you did while you was in the military. Help people, direct people, lead people. We live in a great country. People complain about stuff, but if you've served in the military and you've seen the kind of sacrifices they make, then you would understand. Give back. Continue to give. And that's what I'm going to do. Before we go, I want to thank, all of our 4 presenting sponsors, Cavalry Agency, Navy Federal Credit Union, Purdue University Global, and Veterans United Home Loans for being our sponsors and taking care of us. You know, they love us and we love them. And thanks again for watching. See you on the high ground. Hooah!